Okay. Now we're gonna be talking about Arcane. I think Arcane, I mean, it got very simplified probably barrage-wise. I don't think they really simplified enough barrage-wise. There's not guaranteed refunds on charges anymore. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, so I don't actually think they really simplified it that much. I think Sunfury, as it was before, if you removed intuition, was already like the closest you were getting to simplified arcane barrage casting, and they did not do that. They just added like a bunch of weird stuff to arcane. So yeah, the big changes are they renamed Harmony to Salvo, and then they just made Salvo get generated when you cast a damage spell or like when you hit things with Arcane Orb. And then they made it so that Arcane Explosion essentially doesn't exist anymore, and now you have this ranged version, um, which is interesting. And then they also made Aether 2 always cleave, which is great because that makes it fun. I mean, it's the visual was cool, and this is just amazing, I would say. And then they also added this where you can either have high voltage, where essentially you should have this perma charges from missiles in AoE, or you have missiles consume arcane charges to increase the damage, which is crazy and could lead to some strange builds. But I think this probably just doesn't have enough support in the tree, and also I swear there's like 4 waves of missiles, so I guess it's fine. I do like the idea of this node here, where Arcane Blast and Pulse do increase damage, but also have increased mana cost. This could lead to like the return of a little bit of a conserve phase for Arcane. And then a lot of the other stuff is the same. They nerfed Resonance to be 5%, so now it's much worse funnel, and it has no execute. Impetus just always makes you get an extra arcane charge, so that means that Pulse generates 3 arcane charges, so you really do a lot of barraging. I don't think they changed how Arcane Blast works. It's not a talent tree, so I can't see it. And then they did, a bunch of salvo from Arcane Orb. They made this thing where Arcane Orb consumes clear casting, but now it fires instead of 1 Arcane Orb, 3 Arcane Orbs. So that's kind of weird. They're really trying to like change your playstyle by potentially making you, cast Orb to consume clear casting instead of missiles, or cast missiles to consume Arcane Charge instead of Barrage. And then you still have Orb Barrage as well. So yeah, a little strange. A little strange stuff. I think this is going to be what this is going to play like is going to be strange for single target. AoE is going to be more the same. Like you can just barrage spam still. Potentially they'll find a world where pressing missiles or running this orb consumes clear casting works, and maybe that'd be interesting. But I mean, the tree is obviously set up as a base being barrage spam, and you have access to a lot of or charge regeneration like that. So I think Arcane's still gonna be pretty strong in AoE for that. Their apex talents are empowering touch magi, you get another charge, and then also doing like this AoE damage as well when touch magi ends. And you have 2 touch of magi, so you can just touch the magi during this touch rune thing, and then get that damage in there, and then also have that be during like your arcane soul. So it's kind of strange. They also, what they did to, and again, there's literally no charge refreshers for Arcane anymore. So there's no buff to track to tell you, okay, this is when I barrage. So I feel like that's a little counterintuitive. That was one of their stated things for Arcane was, okay, let's make barraging simple. I feel like they didn't do that. It was already simple when you said, okay, only barrage for glorious incandescence or intuition, essentially. And now you remove both those, and so now it's like, how many arcane salvo stacks do you have, and like, do you have orb or like high voltage? So it's going back to the kind of confusing way for barraging, because when you look at Sunfury, they also changed Spellfire Spears to just be random, so it's just a chance to generate Spellfire Spear. And when you do generate that, then that makes your next barrage called in meteorites. But these meteorites don't give you charges. So I suppose, since these don't, the Glorious Incandescence doesn't stack, you just immediately barrage whenever you get this, and then recover charges however you can. And they also make casting missiles grant meteorite, and whenever a meteorite happens, you get salvo stacks, which is just more barrage damage, essentially. So you'll get more meteorites because now missiles is going to do it as well. That doesn't matter. They completely removed execute. I think I already mentioned that. They're keeping the tier set from this tier where you get haste in Arcane Soul. And then the Arcane Soul now is just spam barrage. So you just don't cast missiles because they remove nether precision. You just spam barrage. So what your playstyle is probably gonna be like is honestly just like you just won't cast missiles. Like there's not really a reason to cast missiles. I mean it can give you some salvo, I guess, if you take this. So maybe you'll cast it for that. Maybe you won't clip missiles. Otherwise, you might just be casting Arcane Blast to like try and trigger this. This is any damaging spell. So yeah, I don't know. You might just cast missiles and just like say whatever. Just cast missiles like twice in a row or something, single target until you get self Bellfire Spheres and then press Barrage and then get your charges and then press Arcane Blast. I don't know. Seems terribly simple. There's not a lot going on for Arcane, I would say. And then Spell Center is literally just exactly the same. You got a bunch of orbs still, and that's literally like it essentially hasn't changed. You just have a bunch of orbs. They did remove Evocate essentially. I mean, you might take it for the mana regen, who knows? But Surge still gives you mana regen, so it's the exact same thing. So you just can press Surge. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how your mana holds up and what it's worth doing, but I don't think they really made this any more intuitive. I think removing nether precision removes like a lack of flow from the rotation. I think in general that's what a lot of these midnight changes have done, is rather than like reduce complexity that much, they've just reduced flow. Like what are you gonna do as Arcane? Now you're like trying to stack salvo before you like press barrage or something, and then you just press barrage when you have like Gloriousing Incandescence, and when you have Spell Slinger, you have no reason to press barrage unless you cap salvo. So it's like, okay, I just cast stuff until I get max salvo and I cast barrage. But what you cast doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, maybe I just press missiles, and then if I have another clear cast, I just press missiles again. And I have no missiles, I press Arcane Blast. That doesn't seem very interesting. People were already saying that Sunfury was incredibly boring this tier, and I feel like they really kind of doubled down on that. I feel like Arcane was not a spec that, aside from, say, if you wanted to remove EVK, which they essentially did, that's fine, but did you really need to like remove all the other spells? Right? And then there was, from Preheat's stream of the alpha, because I'm not alpha. He showcased the AoE, and that was literally just, what current AoE is, right?
It's Arcane gameplay.
Gotta unmute it. Cringe. Yeah, so I mean, he's just gonna barrage orb, barrage, and yeah, it's just that. He just barrages. And he's using the clear cast consume thing from orb, I guess, but yeah, like he just refreshes his orb GCD or every time he barrages, in part because of Spell Slinger drain all the splinters. So I don't know. I mean, it's just like you're not doing anything. There's no skill expression in this. But anyway, yeah. Removed a bunch of stuff. This seems very easy. I do think that I think the Aether Attunement doing AoE always is really nice. Arcane has no additional support for unkept AoE, which is fine. They removed Execute, which is fine as well. That actually makes Arcane less RNG. Because beforehand, because Execute amped your damage so much, what RNG you had like in that one surge you got an Execute, and in that Arcane Soul you had an Execute mattered quite a lot more than the rest of your surges, and now that's not true. So Arcane's gonna be a lot more consistent. Them nerfing Resonance to this amount, we'll see if that even makes its funnel notable. It should still be notable, given you saw how smooth your AoE was. Like no spec currently, and that's probably gonna change, but no spec can really compare to that at the moment. Like Frost smoothness in the AoE is not going to be anywhere near as good at that. So yeah, it's kind of Arcane's niche is a little bit more burst, but having 2-touch Magi's means its burst is elongated, especially with Sunfury. So I just don't really know, but I do like that they're trying to incentivize you to play other things, right, with missiles or with orb being a larger focus. I don't think they have as much support or enough support relative to like barrage for you to actually probably consider it. So yeah, not sure. Not really sure how this is going to end up looking. It's entirely sim questions. So yeah, I would say I'm I'm not like terribly excited for these changes. I mean, I do think that I like the attunement thing a lot. I like this missiles thing a lot, but I think it's single target of Arcane is going to feel really weak. Like, and by weak I mean like it's just not going to be interesting. It's going to be a really boring single target rotation relative to the other specs, which is kind of unfortunate. So curious to see what other people think of that as well. Of course, they did buff prismatic barrier, so now like prismatic barrier is like better than it was, which is kind of questionable. So this is like 20. It was 25%. Now you're adding another 10%. I mean, they might have typed this in. I think they typed this in, so it's actually probably still your prismatic barrier is how it is. But with Sunfury, they improved this merely a setback. So now you just get your barrier spells bonus for another 8 seconds after it's removed, which is pretty solid. That means that you'll have the 25% damage magic damage reduction for 8 seconds after your barrier's removed, which is insane. So you're gonna have a lot of uptime on that. And of course, they did remove a lot of our defensives, right? So mirror image doesn't reduce damage, and great invisibility doesn't reduce damage at all either. So now we just have barrier and ice cold. So that's, and then we also have alter as well, but that's not DR. So barrier and ice cold to live things. So they need to not have a lot of one shots really. And alter time usage is actually going to be even more important, which is kind of awkward because this temporal realignment thing is trash, most likely. So, they probably added a little bit more skill issue to defensives for mage. But I think Arcane will be totally fine, especially with merely a setback. So.